Yeah, hello, Dr. R. Michael Fisher. Educating through art, or education through art. What is art? What is education? What is education's influence on art? What is art's influence on education? And what should those relationships be? Is an interesting set of philosophical questions and perhaps could be really intriguing and could be very boring at the same time. I will try not to bore you in this short video because I want to actually talk about not theory and philosophy so much, although it's part of the conversation that we could have. And I'm glad to have that with you if you push me on it, get me up against the wall. I'd love to speak about some of the depth theory and philosophy behind what I'm going to share today as an experience. So recently, I was sitting on my favorite rock cliff here in Nanaimo, where I ride my bike in the mornings, and I just go sit there and I just kind of meditate. There's a beautiful view and I'm in the forest, but I get to see it to the ocean and nice little landscape. And I put my hands down on this cliff stone, the bedrock, the mother. And as many of you probably know, if you've been following my stone teachings videos, which is the third one now, they are about my connecting with stones and listening to the teachings from the stones, if you will. I know that language might be a little bit weird to people, especially scientific, rational, logical type people. However, if we just kind of play with it poetically at the same time as, yes, I am interested in what stones carry as not just in a physical world, but perhaps even a metaphysical world as well. And this is not uncommonly known as memory, that all matter, all energies carry traces of their history, of their origins, of their sources. And not only that, what we know is that they also record what worked in evolution for them, what works in society in terms of materials and their uses, and how that reflects back with human consciousness. So, yes, now I'm talking about the consciousness of materials. And so, some of my videos you've been probably listening to, if you have, on the spirituality of materiality, of how matter itself contains not just vitalism and sources of spirit as we might use that language, but they actually carry knowledge and knowing, wisdom, perhaps. Right? So this is what I'm playing with. So the experience on the ridge as I'm sitting there gave me an idea of what to do with my this class of 3 to 5 year olds, the forest school, as they're going out from the place where I'm working. As you've probably heard about, I'm volunteering and I'm an artist in residency there. And this nonprofit daycare is really interesting, has great philosophies connected to Rudolf Waldorf education, Rudolf Steiner, and art and education being very closely knit. Montessori, Reggio Emilio philosophies in this program as well. All of that has led me to thinking about how to do curriculum with the children, and that's what I am, an educator as well as an artist. So I had this idea from the stone teaching sitting there. And this is what I did the next day is I sent an email to the instructor of the program, said I'd like to meet you when you take off with your bus early in the morning with all the kids and you're going out to the forest, which they do for, half of the day. And that's part of the philosophy of the forest school or outdoor school programs. Getting very popular these days, by the way. I think that's a good thing. And anyway, I said, stop by the stone pile, which is on the driveway of this daycare center, which is my art installation. And the stones are the medium. And I've talked to these kids a few times, more or less, about what I'm doing as an artist in residency in their daycare, now kindergarten. So they're now a kindergarten group. So stopped the bus. I was out working on the stones, creating a new sculpture, and the kids are all waving. It was great. I was quite welcome, but because the teachers told them I was coming. But of course, they had no idea what I was coming for. So first, just kind of imagine this scenario, which is what I want to share about. This is really art slash education in between from the stone teachings. 3, I took a breath, had my white coat on with all the children's colored marks, which they'd marked me. I had given them permission to recognize me that way and myself to recognize myself that way in relation to them, and that I would wear that when I'm on the premise. So that creates a material, right? Costume, a material, and the marking reality of what was be an art experience that I had with them. I was the paper, so to speak, to color on. So I walk into the bus. It was a great feeling. I love the stage of a bus and the children sitting there, about 14 of them. And they're all a little bit sleepy. It's early in the morning, but some very awake. And I said to them, I had my little kit. Yeah, I haven't told you about the kit, but because I got the stone pile, I've been looking at what are the different kinds of stones in it and how do they vary from being darkest to lightest and texture and so on, as well as, but tone is what I'm mostly interested in because there's no really colorful rocks in a stone pile of gravel, as you know, which this dump is commercial gravel. I'm trying to make it into something incredibly interesting, beautiful, and sacred. That's the gist of my program curriculum idea. And so I got this container with 4 little packets. There's white stones in it, light gray, darker gray, and then darkest gray moving toward black stones. So because I pre-washed them and pre-sorted them, I'm bringing them to the children just to kind of show them the difference in those tones. It's a process that's a little tricky to get them interested in. So I did it for them, a little bit of work, had this container, it's kind of felt like a doctor in my white lab coat and this carrying case of the materials, the stones. So I said to them, the stone people have been talking to me. I've been listening. As I've worked for 2 months with the stone pile, the stones have a message this morning. Stone teaching. And the message is, and of course the kids are just amazingly gracious and honorable, listening carefully. Um, the stones have asked that they would like some help. So first of all, the stones told me that they're very happy to be here at the academy. They're happy to be part of the art materials and the processes and learning. But there's a few stones that are not so happy. In fact, they're sad. They want to go back to the wild where they came from, their place, their origin. And that's in the mountains and in the forest. These stones in the pile, which I haven't shared with them, just sharing with you, of course, are blown up. They're blown up mountain stone bedrock, and they're crushed under great pressure to get to these very particular sizes, which people buy as a certain size of gravel for fill. Very inexpensive, but they're mountain stones. They're Mother Nature, a major part of Mother Nature, her foundation, the earth. So I'm working on how to get children empathetic with a material like a stone, like a mineral, piece of matter. Why should that matter matter? Well, I'm interpreting my working and listening with the stones to them through a human voice, consciousness to their consciousness, from the stone's consciousness. You can hear, like I've created this triangulation of speaking and of memory and of thought and of possible communications that are related to each other. We are related. Those stones are us. They're our body too. They're our matter too. They matter to us and we matter to that matter in a certain kind of way. So it's not like I know all the answers, but that's what I'm sharing with the children. I'm telling the story, right? And children learn really well by stories. And you could say, well, is it fiction? Is it true? Is it scientific? Is it not? I'm not interested in that. I'm actually interested what's in between science, art, fiction, nonfiction. So what's in between the border spaces of our so-called constructed, meaningful, rational world? The adult world. No, I'm in the children's world right now. Okay, Michael Fisher, finish the story. So the in between, I continue the story in some way, creating a bit of a light trance learning experience for the purpose of just getting some messages across, and then they can make choices. Here's how it goes. So I've shared the first little bit of the story. Stones are sad. Some of them want to go back to the wild. And because I said you're in the forest, you would be great to carry some stones back to the forest from the pile. So you can pick from this container I've got. I explained different tones of the stones. And I said the white ones are the only ones you can't pick. So you can pick 2 stones from any of these 4 containers except the white one. So it's great to have except. Really heightens children's awareness. I think it heightens all of us humans. What can I do? Oh, I can't do that. Why? That's interesting. What you can't do. Anyway, so the one thing I said, why you can't take the white ones is because they don't belong in the forests here. They're not from this mountains. They're from another place. And later, one of the children asked me, what place are they from? And I said, I didn't really know, but I know they're not from this place because I put them into the natural mix of crushed stones because I wanted just some white color, and they're very brilliant quartz, kind of crystally, and would be a nice feature to add to the more gray tone stones. Anyway, I found out they're from Quebec, which I need to tell one of the students who asked me where are they actually from. So they're from a long way away, is what I said, and these are the ones that belong here, and they kind of miss being with their other kind. Yeah. So that went over well, and I said, "Do any of you want to pick some stones and take them back to the forest, to the wild, because they're sad?" Oh, they're all hands are up and they're ready, and so I move around, and they all took 2 stones. Um, Really interesting to just kind of watch their whole physical body movement. They're looking in at the options of taking the stones, the 2 that they would choose. So then I said, but there's another part to the story. As I finished that, stood back at the front of the bus. The other part of the story is, and by that time I pulled out a candle, unlit, in a little glass container. And I said, the stones have also told me, in working with them, in their whisper, that they would like to have humans not always going out to the wilds and nature and looking for peace and calm, which they often feel. Stones are not against that, that's fine. But the stone said sometimes it would be really nice if the humans came to the forest and the wild with peace and calm, not just taking from the forest, giving something back, which is peace and calm. So, in my own way, I said it. I don't remember the exact way I said all this slowly to them. And I said, so this is a peace candle I brought. And with your 2 stones, if you want to bring peace and calm to the forest today, as you put the stones back, and you can put them anywhere you want in the forest. You can hide them, bury them, put them whatever. I said, well, I'm going to bring the candle lit. So I pulled out the lighter, barbecue lighter, candles lit. I said, candles represent peace. So it's a peace candle in many places of the world. And so then I demonstrated, if you just put your stone, 1 or 2, up to you, over the flame like this, heat it up, that will help it bring peace and calm to, to the wilds. You take it back. It's up to you. I said, does anybody interested to do this? To bring peace? Oh, hands go up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty soon, everybody does it. So they all do this ritual. And of course, the teachers are a little freaked out. Don't burn yourself. And I really wanted to risk that. So, as you know, in my one video, Stone Teachings 1, I talked about taking children to the edge. And that's the importance of risk in the world of education through art. And in between, we have to get out of those comfort zones to get in between before we settle on, again, another fixed reality, moving from fixed reality to fixed and very controlled world of experiencing. I want children to grow up and be more flexible in moving in between realities rather than just the ones constructed and already formed and predictable. And that's where you should be. And get it? Yeah, it's pretty different. We would have been educated, if I would have been educated on the in between, to live in between, to resource myself in between, to find nourishment in between, to find creativity in between, innovation. So back to the story, Michael. Okay, back to the story was they did the ritual, and then I had the last part of the ritual. I explained to them I had a white Canada goose feather. That's right, really nice big one, and had a little jingle bell thing hooked to it with my hand, and I said, "I'll wave over this over your head when you finish heating the stone." Jingle, jingle goes over their head. They feel the wind on the face. They're just like, they loved it. They loved the ritual of it all. And you can see that. But that's all the art, right? I moved from the stone pile to the bus, and I'm carrying the art that I'm doing in the stone pile. Everything is a continuum of copotensity, of co-impacting the the potential, I sometimes call it, to create and to be connected, to change the world in some way, change our relationships, right? Our connectivity. And that's really what I was just doing there. And that's why I wanted to do this video, just to share with you another example of this world. And children's brain, right, is structured research wise, shows that they're in a different wavelength pattern than they normally will be, quote, normally after the age of 7. Roughly. So it's that first 7 years, which many educators, including Herbert Reed or Rudolf Steiner or many others I've read, have talked about this. Children Pierce and so on, of the magical stage, the mythic stage particularly, but the magical stage of the human mind. It's in a different trance-like state, actually. Some people have said it's a semi-hypnosis or a light hypnotic state that they're in or very easy can go in. And that's how they relate to the world of all these relationships. That's how they're learning and watching and copying and doing. And that's why it's like dream space. They have a very fluid moving in between reality, quote, scientific, fantasy, supposedly non-scientific, but you could call that the artful side and the more rational, logical side, whatever you want, left brain, right brain. There's all kinds of ways we could talk about this. And I, as an educator, designer of education, I'm very interested in these possibilities. So in between is really interesting. In that possibility of being informed by both sides and all sides, and probably more than two sides. In this very simple analogy I'm giving you, a right brain, left brain, it's probably way more complex than that, or consciousness and unconsciousness. They are in this really intermediary, interim state in their brainwave and learning processes and their being. They're not in the same world we're in. especially after 8, and then of course adults, the ways we're conditioned and the way our brain changes. It actually restructures itself into other skills and capacities that become priority. But as a child, the brain is still programmed to keep the child in a much more magical brain. Okay, that's a rough generalization. So that's what I'm doing in the way I think we ought to do, at least some of the education for the children is keep that in between world. So here we are, I'm talking to stones and they're talking to stones. And the question will always be, well, Michael, did you actually talk to the stones? Is that what they actually said? And I'm going, it's an irrelevant point. It's an irrelevant question to me and what I'm actually doing, because it's art. It's art based. That's why I held up that education through art. And I'm working with very young age groups. So that's what I'm aware of. That's where I want to be. That's who I'm connecting with. I'm not connecting with everything necessarily the adults think or anybody else or the state of British Columbia and the education department. Is this adequate education? Is this properly, assessed that it's actually useful? Useful for what? To whom? To what? What is our future necessary um, skills that are really necessary? And so you can hear me. My necessary skills, where I'm working from anyway, is demonstrating and practicing and attuning to connectivity in the most basic fundamental way so that actually materials in nature, if we want to call it the materials in our body and our mind, and the spirits of materials, the consciousness of materials, whatever language you want to use, and of our body, of our mind as humans, that they are communicating and connecting in between, not caught up in these categories, as I said, of these kind of opposites or binaries. And so, yeah, they did the ritual. I left the bus. All I know is I had this amazing feeling of, wow, that was such a gift that I was able to have access to being with these people's children, which is astounding. How did I ever get here? But that's, another interesting story. Why am I here now at this time of my life? And I get to play out, my way of bringing a little bit of this educational philosophy into action. And then they can take it into action. So I've just asked the teachers recently how it went, who went in the bus trip with them. I didn't go. Still, I was ready to leave and had done my work for the morning on the sculpture itself, the stones. And that's just an ongoing process, right? It's just all ongoing. I've got 2.5 months. I'm halfway through my artist residency. Just want to let you know that. And I hope you'll tune in to other stone teachings. Good day.